Not saying that like things need to be allegorical. I don't think they necessarily should be, but we can explore these themes in a way that allows people to actually engage and critically think. Once again, going back to that hierarchy, that ladder of creative responsibility. Do we aim to provide escape? Do we aim to entertain, connect, teach, or challenge? Across galaxies and imaginative realms, stories carry us beyond the ordinary. This is Reading Things and Writing Stuff, where we explore the craft of sci-fi and fantasy stories and uncover how legendary tales are built so you can forge your own. I'm Tim Fasciola, award-winning author of the Vengeful Realm series, here to guide you through the art of storytelling. Welcome to the next chapter of Reading Things and Writing Stuff. I'm Tim Fasciola, the author of A Vengeful Realm, and today we're going to talk about something that I freaking love. I've always like, you know what I love? I love when stories really get into the nitty-gritty of three things: religion, myths, and legends, because they do so much to showcase the values of a society, the values of a world, and the concepts of what is faith, what is religion, what is belief, what is trust, what is knowledge, what is like beyond that. I love that. Those concepts fascinate me. And when stories do their homework, when storytelling incorporates those things in a way that feels real, that feels grounded, you have me hook, line, and sinker. Like I'm sold. I don't need more. I love that. Now, everyone's different, and I've mentioned in previous episodes, like, take what works for you and your story, leave what doesn't. Don't get, like, it all needs to be cohesive. That's number one. But, you know what I hate? I hate. It just, like, takes me out of it. When everyone in a society believes the same thing, unless there's a reason for it. But if this is the one religion, everyone believes that one religion. I've never experienced that type of uniformity, and I don't think I ever will. And so the lack of conflict about that, and some people don't care about that, like different strokes, different folks, but I hate when a story feels so uniform. Now, I mentioned Mistborn, the Final Empire. There is the Lord Ruler. All other religions have been outlawed, and the only ones that remain are kept by the keepers, Sazed in particular. And so when it makes sense why there's only one religion and all others have been outlawed. But not everyone abides by that religion. And then new religions form. So I love that. I think it's fascinating. I think it's executed well and done well. What I don't like is when everyone's just like, this is what it is and this is what it always will be and we will never think outside of that or never challenge that. Like, it just feels so unlike our world. It doesn't ground it and I'm lost. But when I love, going back to that, I love when worlds really have fleshed out religions, factions within factions, divides over things that matter to them. It showcases the value system. And I think value systems are really what shape everything. Like if you look at our society, right? Like how much of our society is determined by the belief system, and specifically it's Christianity, right? Christianity has, Judeo-Christian values have shaped our entire Western world. Everything from naming conventions, family structures, social structures, everything is kind of derived from the patriarchal Bible. Everything comes from that. So it showcases the value system in every aspect of the human experience. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's just what is. So if, for example, a incohesiveness, just like swords crossed and wires crossed and not in a good way, is when we have the world, everyone in this world believes in this one goddess. There's one goddess. Everyone believes in this one goddess. And yet the entire world is still very patriarchal, very, male head of household and family structured the same way. Why? If this is what the society values in a religion, how is that not influenced the other aspects? And those are the things that new writers often just don't consider. They're just I thought it would be cool if we had this. Well, what does that influence? What does that change? How does that shape the world? How does that shape the characters? So if we can take a deep dive into stories that utilize and work with and work against, like, there's a couple different angles I want to take as it relates to myth and religion, right? So first I want to talk about The Traitor's Blade by Sebastian de Castell. This is the Great Coats Quartet. 4 books. This is a great series. And Sebastian de Castell, I've had the pleasure of meeting him at a convention. The most genuine, down-to-earth dude you could meet. I love authors, man. They're just like the best people, most of them. But Sebastian de Castell is one of the good ones. So Traitor's Blade and the Great Coats Quartet, we get to see the world from the perspective of Falcio Valmont, who's one of my favorite protagonists. I freaking love this guy. But he is not a man of faith. He hates all things magic. And in this world, there are the saints. And the saints are the way in which, like, the magic system works and the religion kind of works is there are these saints, and they are the paragons of a singular virtue, essentially. So, like, the people who embody something so, like, to the nth degree, like, this is their personality. Like, they literally, mortal becomes God. And I thought that, like, that's a really cool, fascinating thing. And then they walk among people, and they have, like, this awe. Like, they can literally stop people in their tracks and, like, just boom, just drop to their knees. But Falcio, the way he moves through this world is, like, they're so few and far between that if you haven't encountered a saint, it's just like, oh, the saints. Like, they're just good for different swearing. Which also, another thing I love, mind you, is world-specific swearing. And if you understand your religion and your myth and your lore and how that shapes society's values, you can make some great world-specific, swearing things without just saying our real-world swears. Which, again, branding. Depends on what you're trying to do. But in the Great Coats Quartet, the way in which religion is utilized and the way in which Falcio's perceptions on it evolve throughout the series, the way in which his held beliefs are confronted, the way he must deal with them, the legends, the history, the past, like, all of these things make the world feel so real and so lived in. I think it's just so well done. But, like, they're people given immortality, and therefore, immortality, like, they can be killed, but, like, they're given this post, essentially, to this power as the living embodiment of this virtue. Whereas, compare that, this concept of, do you have faith that they exist? Yeah, if you've met them, you're like, yeah, they exist. But, like, do you trust them? Do you value their roles in the world? Whereas H.M. Long, The Hall of Smoke, that series, it's like, I believe it's 4 books now. 4 books, all in the same universe. They can be read as one-offs. They do have an order to them, but, like, they're meant to be like a collection of 4 novels in this same world. But in this world, specifically in Hall of Smoke, it's like a Viking-inspired world where the gods are real. Like, they are real. They walk among us, and they're extremely powerful. No one is It's not a matter of, do I believe in the gods or not? And when you have a situation when it's not a matter of belief, not a matter of faith, it's a matter of, do you trust this god? And that is Hessa's story in book 1 of that series, Hall of Smoke. And I found that really compelling as a structure, because it's told from the perspective of a priestess, and for a god of war. And though this character is she's got power, she's strong, she can fight, she has magic, but it's all about, like, her story is not about waging war, it's about finding peace, creating peace, and having understanding with her goddess. It's really fascinating to see one of my favorite female characters with the way she moves through. Not my favorite stories, not my favorite plot, but, like, I friggin' loved this character. It was one of those stories where it almost, like, while reading it, I was like, man. And then afterwards, I was like, wow, that was actually, like, really good. It was something that, like, stuck with me afterwards. Structure-wise, left a lot to be desired, which is something that you'll notice with me. I love I can tell when a story is plotted versus when it's not. And if I can tell, that usually comes back in the editing process, which is something we will talk about. But for now, anyway, Hall of Smoke, the gods are real. Do we trust them? Do they deserve our trust? And that was something that was like really fascinating to me to work through. And then the way in which religion and faith can be weaponized. This is something that we see in A Song of Ice and Fire with the high sparrows and like the high sparrow, like this whole with the sparrows and the high priest of the sparrows. It's something that's just like, how can faith be weaponized? How can religion be weaponized? And I think that like we've seen that in our world, the way in which something that is so pure of thought and of value can be weaponized, perpetrated, utilized as a means of control, as a means of power. And that's something that like when it's shown in a world in a way like that, once again, it lowers people's inhibitions. If we were talking about Catholicism and Judaism and Islam, and I feel like it would be like walls up. Yeah, I have this belief, I have that belief, I have, you were not going to change my mind talking about, but like in a fantasy world, not saying that like things need to be allegorical. I don't think they necessarily should be, but we can explore these themes in a way that allows people to actually engage and critically think. Once again, going back to that hierarchy, that ladder of creative responsibility. Do we aim to provide escape? Do we aim to entertain, connect, teach, or challenge? And like stories that kind of are in that 4 to 5, for me, that's really what I gravitate to. Like, what are they trying to say about this thing? What are they trying to teach? Or what are they trying to challenge your way of thinking on of a previously held belief? I love that. Another series by Peter V. Brett, The Demon Cycle. The way in which I love prophecies. Like I can talk about prophecies all day long. The prophecies in Song of Ice and Fire, the prophecies in The Demon Cycle, like, man, I like that. Really gets me thinking. It gets me engaged in the world. It like how different people interpret different things. Like it's a writing technique. It's called a quibble. So with a quibble is something that's like kind of cryptic in nature. And like oftentimes it's a prophecy or a writing where you think it means one thing, but it could mean another. It like very easily you can be interpreted a different way. And therefore it like creates a twist later or a reveal later. So think about, the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like there are still internet conversations. There's still like Reddit threads dedicated solely to this where, fans can theorize and look at and explore and challenge. And it's a world that's so real that people live in it outside of reading it. Like, that's amazing. Please finish it. One day, please finish it, George R. R. Martin. But in The Demon Cycle, there's this prophecy of the deliverer. And this is a world where every night demons literally spawn out of the ground. And they're like kind of forged by these different elements. So there's like rock demons and fire demons and sand demons. And they just like exist to shred people apart. But like they're also like governed by these like very sentient like entities. They're extremely powerful. And like the war between demons and humans is fascinating. And, there's this prophecy of the deliverer that's going to change everything, save everyone, do the thing, right? And the interpretations by different cultures within this same world that are dealing with these same demons is fascinating. And like, that's something that has stuck with me more so than like great series, 5-book series, and there's a bunch of spin-offs. Like the core series is 5 books, but that's what stuck with me more. So there's Arlen Bale's great, and he has this story from like kid who doesn't just want to survive, he wants to fight back against the demons. And like there's these runes that you can use to, protect yourself. And he literally, it's called the Warded Man. He like paints these runes all over himself. He learns this language so that he can empower himself and literally fight these demons, survive outside and fight these demons. And, some people believe he's the deliverer. And then there's this character Jardish. No, that's in a different book I'm reading. I can't remember his name. Jardir? It's Jardir. Jardish is from the Son of the Black Sword. That's not the point. Maybe we'll talk about that one later. Because that also has like this, this religion and this concept of, a prophet that will return and return things to the way they were. And that is something, it's like such a trope within fantasy, but there's a reason why we keep coming back to it, because it helps us make meaning out of our real world. It helps us as people, I think there's a reason why faith systems exist, and it's because we want to believe that there's more. And exploring that in ways that are not riddled with real world, connotations and violence and stigmas, and I think that helps the human brain to process, like, what does this mean? What is healthy faith? What is unhealthy faith? What is actual faith versus what is dogma? What is religion versus what is community? And I think all of these can be explored in fiction. And Jardir, he thinks he's the deliverer, and he wants to be the deliverer, and it's kind of his whole purpose. And so Arlen and Jardir have a really fascinating frenemy type of rivalry, which is fascinating. And it makes the story more so, like, for me, than like, okay, demons come out of the ground. Like, the war against the demons is fine, but it's like the conflict between those two I loved and sticks with me. I read that. I haven't reread that series, and it's probably been over 10 years. And yet I still, like, that's there. It's in the brain box. So having well thought out, constructed religion, myth, legends, like, it showcases, it kind of centralizes a society's value system. So, like, think about our world. What are the myths, the legends that kind of stick with us, that are out, like, from maybe old religions that aren't really part of active religions now, and yet the myths and legends remain? So, like, take, like, the 12 labors of Hercules. Like, is Hercules a historical figure? Who the hell knows? Maybe, who knows? Were his labors real? Who knows? I'm sure if you're a historian out there and you can let us know, or an anthropologist, like, let us know. Great. But, like, it's still alive today. The Greek gods, no one's necessarily, like, kneeling before their altars nowadays. And yet, what does Hercules represent? What is his legend? What do the 12 labors represent? Like, that, those merits are valued in our society today, and therefore the story lives on. So, like, if we can incorporate elements of that into our world, it makes the world feel lived in. It reinforces the value system that the character can either accept or reject, a faith system that the character can either accept or reject. These are choices. These are reflective opportunities for both your character in the world, but also your reader with the character. And even if a reader doesn't agree with the character, the reader still they should understand the character, why they're, like, wrestling with this thing in this way. So because this is something that I love, you can imagine, I wrote about that. Like the religions and the understandings of the prophecies, and how religion and faith can be weaponized, and how it can serve as a beacon of hope, and how different cultures can have, like, similar ideas but different names for the same thing. Like, these are things that I explore in my stories because it fascinates me. I think it is a part of the human experience, a part of the human condition that I want to spend time with, I want to explore, because it helps me understand our world better. It helps me connect to our people better. But I learn a lot about myself by writing these things. And it showcases, it demonstrates and encourages, it edifies my own pursuit of my values. So if we, like, almost take, like, a little snippet, right? So there are, in a vengeful realm, there is this great migration where there are these disasters in Rania, and people then flee, and they go across the Sun Sea, and they land, and there's these natives of Stockholm who live there, and the natives of Stockholm welcome these migrants, and these migrants, the Ranians, they have abandoned their old goddess because they believe that these disasters were the wrath of the gods. They were upset that they were not worshipped, and therefore they brought this calamity to the land. And now the gods have spoken to their leader, the leader of this great migration, and he has now become their king. And people have followed this prophet, named him king, and they're now in a new place, welcomed by these other people who have their own god system. And now, in this new world where these, there's this assimilation taking place, there's this fear. Well, if we do this, if we allow their values to enter our values, if we allow their belief to infect our belief, is this going to bring about another reckoning, another a set of disasters. This like are we going to have to incur the wrath of the gods again? The first time it happened, like we were wrong. Shame on us. We were spared. We were brought back. Are we going to get spared this time? So it's our job to ensure that everyone follows this way. So then it becomes like a systematic oppression. There's a war. There's a civil war. Some people are like amongst these Valencians, the Iranians who have now left this place, come here and have started to take over the land that they were welcomed to and install their own, no, you got to do this, you got to do that. Some of them kind of reject that. And that's something that, again, I mentioned, the thing that I hate is when everyone's just yes, rank and file, everyone believes the same thing. I've never experienced that. You can find a room, no matter how small, you will find disagreements at something of like-minded people. There will still be disagreements. So in this world, there becomes a civil war. There's the Iranians who believe that if we don't ensure a strict adherence to Valencian values, if we allow other faiths to exhibit in our place, it will incur the God's wrath. And then there's other people who still believe in these same gods, the Valencians, in this new place from Rania, who are I don't think it's that serious. I don't think that's how it is. I don't think that it is our place to enforce these people who have obviously lived in peace and not been hit by these disasters without our gods. It's not our place to install this over them and make them adhere to our belief system. And so this creates a civil war where half of them are siding with the natives and the other half is trying to weaponize their religion. And unfortunately, the group that weaponizes their religion wins and enslaves the natives and the bastard sons of the side that lost the civil war. And this sets us up in this a vengeful realm. Now, these oppressed people, they've had their gods, and after they've been overtaken, there's these new set of prophecies. There's these seers of their faith who there's going to be these three: a wielder, a harbinger, a herald, and together they're going to bring about this age of the end that will be a rebirth. The age of the end of what? And so you can imagine these Valencians who hear this, they're like, oh, well, we've overtaken you, we've enslaved you, but you still have your religion. Even if you're practicing it in secret, we need to expunge this from our society or we're going to incur the God's wrath. So it's it never ends. You've gotten exactly what you wanted and it's still not good enough. And this zealotry that comes with it, and that fascinates me. What does that say about a human? What is their belief is so singular, so strong, and so even if it goes against the tenets of the other things that their religion preaches, it is your job to guide people to live well. But it's what defines live well? It needs to be these values, and it's okay, well, you don't exist within these values, so therefore you are less than. And this is challenged by our main character here, Zephyrus. He wakes in a temple that is outlawed. He has no memories. And so I wanted to explore in this story, what if someone is denied their memories, their biases, their prejudices, and they're dropped into this clearly divided world. All they have is their principles to guide them. And, so often religion is something that is not chosen, it's inherited. Belief is something that's not chosen, it's inherited. It's not found, it is, I don't want to say forced upon, but forced upon. And that's why we see so much church hurt. That's why we see so what if there was a person who didn't have any of these biases dropped into this world? How are they going to move through it? What is going to guide them if they don't have these tenets that they're supposed to abide by? And so that's Zephyrus's internal arc as he's navigating this world. Now, it becomes more complex because, once again, religions have factions between them. How many denominations of Christianity are there? Not everyone who believes in the same thing believes in the same thing the same way. And so, the people that he is enslaved with, many of which are these natives or the people who supported the natives. And there's different religions amongst them, but the main one, Celestia, they believe in these three gods. And these three gods have imparted through the seers that there's going to be a herald, a harbinger, and a wielder to deliver the people, their people back to freedom. But even amongst them, there's division. There's a group that believes when the seers announce who the wielder will be, there's these three artifacts, these three artifacts that will, like, the wielder will have, and they will then lead this, this path to freedom. So one group, the Arcane Templar, they believe that when the seers find the wielder, we will give them these three artifacts to fulfill their fate. So their job is to protect these artifacts until such a time. Meanwhile, the Warlocks of Sage, the same religion, they believe the same thing, they follow the same prophecy. But where they differ over is, you believe when the seers find the person, that person will then be given the treasures, these three artifacts. The Warlocks believe the person who claims the three treasures will be the wielder. And so they don't want to wait for the wielder to be found. They want to make a wielder. And that subtle difference creates tons of conflict. They believe 99% of the same things, but it's the 1%. And, when you have faction within faction, even like, there's a gladiator rebellion, some people believe this is a noble cause and the call for freedom, and other people it's a means of retribution and vengeance. So this happens all the time, and that's not necessarily religion, that's just the differences within a cause. But if we can understand that the multifaceted approach to religion, to myth, to legend, to history, and how that shapes our understanding of the world, and therefore how we move through it, and therefore our value system. Notice it's not just one thing, it's how one thing layers on the other, and layers on the next, and layers on the next. That cohesiveness, that's what makes stories feel real, that's what makes them feel lived in, that's what makes them feel memorable, that's what makes them enter the reader's meaning-making cycle, that's what allows them to talk about it with passion. So I encourage you, my writers, take the time, and once again, not every story needs to explore, religion or faith or myth or legends in this capacity. Take what works for you, leave what doesn't. But this is definitely something that, you can build a story around, but you should follow your passion in doing so. Thank you so much for joining and following along, listening to this chapter of Reading Things and Writing Stuff. Hope you join us in the next chapter.